Billionaire discovers. Single mom crying in the rain, her incredible story of hope and transformation. Julian Carter was a titan in the tech industry, a name synonymous with innovation and success. But amid the skyscrapers and boardroom battles, a gnawing emptiness festered in his chest, especially as he ran through the drizzle of a quiet suburban park early one brisk morning. He often used these moments to cleanse his mind and escape the relentless demands of a life filled with too many meetings and too few genuine connections. Yet today, there was something different in the air, a tension that wrapped around him as tightly as the cold rain on his skin. Halfway through his routine, he spotted her. A woman hunched on a weathered bench, completely drenched, with silent tears cutting paths through the rain on her cheeks. Laura. He didn't know her name, but recognition sparked deep within, rooted in an instinctual need to understand. She wasn't merely another shadow in his perfect world. She radiated a fierce spirit beneath her despair. The patter of rain seemed to drown out the chaos in his mind, and for a brief moment, he felt an overwhelming urge to connect, perhaps even save her. As Julian approached, an internal battle raged. Should he interrupt her solitude? Could his high-powered persona offer any real comfort? The fear of crossing that invisible line sent his heart racing. Wealth and status surrounded him like an impenetrable fortress. Simple gestures felt alien as the faces of acquaintances flashed in his mind, questioning why a billionaire would condescend to foster a connection with someone whose world mirrored so much struggle. But then he remembered his own struggles, cloaked by the success he flaunted like a badge of honor, and it shook him. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice broke through the sound of the rain, startling her. She looked up, her eyes wide, revealing a depth of pain that rippled through him. He hesitated, but couldn't walk away. "I have a coat if you need one," he offered. Before he knew it, they were talking. Laura's voice trembled like the rain as she shared pieces of her life. Of 2 kids waiting at home, and the crushing weight of unpaid bills forcing her into survival mode. The artist she once aspired to be was now a distant memory, clouded by loss and sacrifice. As he listened to her story, her passion, her survival instinct, a fire ignited within him. Questions surged through his mind. Could he pull her back from the brink? Would helping her truly make a difference, or was it an escape from his own reality? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as the rain subdued to light drops around them, the emotional storm within Julian magnified. Offering mentorship to Laura could breach the divides of their lives. But what would his peers think? They would certainly scoff at a billionaire associating with someone like her. Paralyzed by doubt, Julian weighed his own needs against hers. Would he face condemnation for nurturing this unlikely bond? Deep inside, he questioned the worth of his success if it left him feeling so hollow. The stakes felt impossibly high as whispers of betrayal, privilege, and moral integrity danced in his thoughts. As Laura's ex-husband resurfaced and precariously threatened her fragile state, Julian faced a reckoning. In this moment of confusion and impending emotional turmoil, the air thickened with unspoken fear, drawing them both closer to the precipice of their tangled destinies. Could one act of compassion break the chains of their contrasting worlds? Or would it doom them both to the weight of expectation and disappointment? The rain began to taper off, leaving behind a backdrop of uncertainty, with heartbeats echoing in the silence as they both stood irrevocably at a crossroads. The rain had receded, but a tempest of emotions still churned within Julian. He felt raw, exposed, and more alive than he had in years, standing by that bench under the fading clouds. He realized this shared moment with Laura was a pivotal point, not just for her, but for him as well. His packed schedule, routines, and gilded existence had dulled his senses. Now, her struggles laid bare the fractures in his own perfect world. What if I help her? Julian thought, the question thrumming in his mind like an unyielding beat. It felt like stepping onto a tightrope strung across his well-constructed empire. The safety net below was non-existent, and plunging into the depths could shred his carefully curated reputation. Yet, the idea that he could actually make a difference, that he could foster her dreams, electrified him. "Laura," he said gently, breaking the weighty silence. "What if we could find a way for you to pursue that passion again?" The offer surprised even him as it spilled out. Yet there was no going back. He had crossed an invisible line, moving into uncharted territory where the stakes had transformed from professional risk to something much more personal and profound. Laura blinked at him, her expression dancing between disbelief and desperation. "You think I have a chance? After everything?" Her voice trembled, revealing layers of vulnerability beneath the surface of her weariness. For a fleeting moment, Julian saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, igniting a fierceness in his heart. His instincts kicked in. Perhaps it wasn't just about her retaking control of her narrative. It was about him confronting his own demons. Julian realized he had built walls around his heart that protected him from vulnerability, but that also isolated him from the very authenticity he craved. If this chance meant shedding his safety net and risking societal judgment to help someone, then maybe it was time to act. He envisioned dedicated time, perhaps in the evenings, not only mentoring Laura, but also exploring what he had neglected in his own life: empathy, creativity, and connection. It filled him with a quiet determination. Could he cultivate a process that wove their destinies together through collaborative projects, perhaps even a community art piece where Laura showcased her work? Driven by that new vision, Julian extended his hand. "Let's figure this out together. I can help you reconnect with that artist inside." He held his breath, sensing the weight of his offer. This was no mere business arrangement. It felt monumental, almost sacred. Laura gazed at him, her hesitation palpable. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, uncertainty flickering behind her eyes. Julian felt every second stretch into eternity, the very air charged with possibility. Would she accept the lifeline he was offering? Just as she began to speak, a distant shout broke their moment, the authoritative voice of her ex-husband crashing into their fragile peace. Julian's heart raced. The looming threat reflected his own fears of falling apart at any moment. In that instant, he knew everything they had shared. The fragile thread connecting their lives could snap. This was the true test, not just for Laura, but for himself. Would he stand alongside her as the storm approached, or step back and let the chaos take its toll? The reality settled violently. The time had come to face his own fears and enemies, both external and within. Julian felt the ground shift beneath him, awakening a fierce resolve. He would not let her face this alone. "Laura, whatever may come, I'm here for you. We will fight this together." As he locked eyes with her, Julian sensed a shift. Not just the hope for Laura's recovery, but an awakening of his own purpose that pushed through the damp fog of his existence. Yet, in the shadows, the specter of disapproval loomed ever nearer, threatening to unravel everything. How much longer could they stand against the tide? The rain had stopped, but the storm was on the horizon, and with it, the trials that would either forge their connection or tear it apart. Julian's heart raced as he turned to face the encroaching chaos. The authoritative voice of Laura's ex-husband echoed through the park, a harsh reminder of the complexities of real life that remained obscured behind his polished facade. This intrusion ignited an unsettling cocktail of determination and dread inside him. In that moment, he had a choice to make. Stand firm against the tide, or retreat back to the safety of his insulated life. "Laura," he murmured, grounding himself in her presence, as if her warmth could shield them from the approaching storm. "Whatever happens, we solidify this moment. We're not just making plans. We're taking this leap together." Her eyes flickered with uncertainty. But beneath it, Julian could sense an unyielding spirit. He couldn't help but admire her resilience. The emotional weight of her past had carved deep lines into her soul, yet here she was, fighting for another chance. He found himself reflecting on the sheer audacity in her willingness to dream again. It mirrored his own thirst for a life guided by authentic purpose, rather than hollow achievement. Suddenly, Laura's ex-husband, a man whose size and presence screamed authority, stalked towards them. Julian's instinct urged him to protect her, to create a buffer against the turbulent winds that raged within her past. He glanced at Laura, who stood frozen, caught in the eye of the storm. If he was to help her reclaim her narrative, he had to embody the strength he admired in her. "Who's this?" her ex-husband barked, his eyes narrowing. Julian inhaled deeply, the air thick with tension. His response required careful calibration, assertive, yet poised. "I'm Julian. I'm here to support Laura. I believe she has an incredible talent and deserves to pursue it." A fleeting flicker of surprise crossed the ex-husband's face, quickly swallowed by a sneer. "Support? You think she can just waltz back into the art world after everything? You don't know her like I do." Julian's heart pounded, but he countered. "And clearly, you don't see her potential. Everyone deserves a second chance to prove themselves." Their eyes locked. In that moment, Julian felt the weight of Laura's silent plea surging beneath the surface. This confrontation wasn't simply about her past. It was about his willingness to become an ally in her quest for self-discovery. Laura finally found her voice, trembling, yet defiant. "I may not have it all figured out, but I'm not just your shadow anymore. I want to create. I want to live." Her words sliced through the tension, framing a boundary Julian had not realized needed reinforcing. It reinforced their shared purpose, urging Julian to skillfully navigate this confrontation, not just as an advocate for Laura, but as an awakening force within himself. "I stand by her," Julian declared, his tone steady, unexpectedly emboldened. "Your attempts to undermine her will no longer work. You can't hold her down any longer." The ex-husband bristled, taken aback. Julian could feel the lingering weight of societal expectations bearing down on him. The perception of a wealthy man interfering in someone else's life, risking the pristine veneer he had cultivated for years. Yet here he was, unapologetic. This vulnerability, this open declaration of his loyalty, felt profoundly liberating. As tension hung thick in the air, Laura glanced at Julian, gratitude reflecting in her eyes. He understood that this was more than a moment of conflict. It was a step towards forging a new identity, one that more fully embraced connection, courage, and selflessness. But as the ex-husband's anger radiated from him in waves, Julian sensed the stakes rising. It wasn't just about their budding alliance. It was about facing down all the fears he had accumulated over the years. The fears of societal judgment, of exposing his vulnerability, of challenging the powers that be. He felt an undercurrent of resolve coursing through his veins. Together with Laura, they would pursue a path defined by authenticity and determination. Yet, waves of uncertainty loomed ominously ahead. Could they overcome the shadows of their past? Before he could ponder further, the ex-husband turned on his heel, a final, scornful remark lingering in the air. Julian clenched his jaw, knowing that this clash was merely a precursor to greater challenges. What lay ahead would demand even more courage and intentionality. With shaky breaths, he turned to Laura, their connection solidified by shared trials. As they faced the horizon, He was acutely aware that their journey had only just begun. Would they discover the fullness of themselves along the way, or would the past continue to haunt them? Julian stood in the aftermath of the confrontation, his mind racing. The air felt heavier, each hesitant breath sinking him deeper into a whirlpool of uncertainty. Laura's fierce declaration had illuminated something within him, yet the shadows of the past loomed larger than ever, threatening to engulf them both. He could not shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the challenges that lay ahead. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically soft, the concern evident in his tone. The strength he had drawn from confronting Laura's ex-husband began to wane, replaced by an overwhelming urge to shield her from further pain. The bitter taste of victory lingered as he watched her process the moment. Laura's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her face a mixture of vulnerability and fierce determination. "I didn't expect you to stand up to him like that," she admitted, taking a tentative step closer, their shoulders brushing. It felt powerful. His resolve deepened at her words. "You deserve that power, Laura. You deserve to reclaim your life." Julian felt a flicker of something new within himself, a desire not just to protect, but to empower. This realization struck him as both exhilarating and terrifying. He had often gravitated towards leadership roles, yet here, in supporting Laura, he found himself in uncharted territory. But as they stood there, a haunting echo of the confrontation loomed in their thoughts. The ex-husband's words had been carefully chosen to pierce, each syllable a reminder of the weight of the past. Julian's own decisions began to feel more pressing. He had spent years building a reputation defined by control and ambition, yet he realized that the path to authenticity meant embracing the uncertainty that came with deep connections. As he processed this internal conflict, a familiar voice of doubt whispered through his mind. What if his presence in Laura's life only complicated her already tumultuous journey? He toiled with the implications. The deeper he delved into this unexpected alliance, the more he risked losing the careful balance he had maintained thus far. He could feel fear clawing at his gut, threatening to rear up and pull him back into the shadows he had just begun to step out of. "Julian," Laura's voice pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. "I know he'll never truly let me go. He was a part of my life for so long. How am I supposed to fight that?" Her honesty shattered the fragile cocoon of courage they had spun together. The enormity of her challenge sat heavily between them. "One step at a time," Julian replied, instinctively grasping her hand. The warmth of their touch ignited a spark of solidarity. "We face this together. You're not alone. I want to help you, however I can." His decision crystallized in that moment. He could no longer hide behind the walls of status or wealth. To truly support Laura meant leaning into the discomfort of vulnerability. The fear of societal judgment clawed at him, yet the potential for deeper connections called louder. The dynamic between them thrummed with unspoken possibilities as they stood on the precipice of something greater. Yet that very moment was shattered, as Laura's phone buzzed violently in her pocket, jolting them both. The sound echoed, magnifying the tension that had begun to cradle their exchange. Laura's expression shifted to one of panic. She glanced at the screen, and Julian felt a knot tighten in his chest. "It's him," she breathed, dread washing over her features. "He's not done." Julian's instinct kicked in again. He could feel the stakes rising, every confrontation guiding him toward an inevitable reckoning. They couldn't afford to falter now. They had to face this adversary together. What awaited them on the other side of that screen was uncertainty, tinged with the undeniable threat of opportunity. As she hesitated, finger hovering above the screen, Julian leaned closer. "Let's answer it together," he urged. There was no separating their chances for growth anymore. They were intertwined, their fates tangled in this complex web of rebuilding lives. With a deep breath, Laura pressed, "Answer," her gaze flickering to Julian. In that moment, he understood. This was not just about facing a past that sought to define them. It was about embracing a future that was begging to be forged. But as the voice filled the air, a chill of concern rippled through him. This was only the beginning, a point of no return. Would they embrace the chaos or retreat once more into safety? The answer began to unravel in those fraught seconds, with consequences stretching far beyond their current confrontation. Julian's heart raced as the voice on the other end of the line dripped with malevolence. It droned on, weaving threats and manipulation curated to prey on Laura's fears. He could sense the tension in her body, the way she tensed like a coiled spring, ready to snap. This was a critical moment. However they navigated it could determine their shared trajectory. He leaned in further, the warmth of her hand under his becoming a grounding force in turbulent waters. "Laura," he whispered, signaling her to focus on him rather than the venom directed at her from the speaker. "You have the strength to take control. Don't let him define this moment." As he watched her struggle, Julian felt a surge of frustration mixed with empathy. How many times had he allowed external voices to dictate his path, to assert dominance over his choices? This was the opportunity for both of them to break free from their chains. He realized again how crucial it was to support Laura, not just as a protective shield, but as a catalyst for her liberation. "You don't need to respond to his intimidation," he added softly, pulling her focus back onto their shared goal. "We're in this together, remember?" Laura nodded, her breath hitching as they addressed the incoming messages. Together, they forged a strategy, a plan for how she would articulate her boundaries without relinquishing her power. Julian felt a flicker of hope. There was potential in their collaboration, an avenue to build not only Laura's strength, but his own resilience. "Stop this," Laura finally said, her voice steady and unwavering. "I refuse to submit to your threats any longer." A rush of pride surged through Julian. Her courage was infectious, marking a turning point in their journey. This was not merely about confronting her ex-husband. This was about reclaiming her sense of self. With every word she delivered, he could see the walls around her heart thicken, fortified by newfound resolve. Yet, the dread on her face told a different story. Julian noticed the toll this encounter was taking on her state of mind, the way it wore her down even as she fought back. It reinforced his earlier fear that perhaps he couldn't shield her from the fallout of the past. "Just breathe," he said, his hand squeezing hers. "You're doing great. This is only one battle, but we have many more to fight together." As Laura hung up, tears streaked down her cheeks, but there was defiance in her eyes. They were no longer lingering in the shadows of uncertainty. Flickers of empowerment coursed between them, instilling a newfound sense of purpose. However, the question loomed ominously in Julian's mind. Was this confrontation just the beginning, or would it unleash a storm far beyond their control? He couldn't ignore the reality that they had now crossed a line, and there was no returning to the safe, compartmentalized lives they once led. Realizing that they needed to strategize carefully, Julian pulled out his phone and began researching resources, lawyers, counselors, anything that could provide support for Laura. As he did, a part of him buried deep-sought validation. Would taking these steps mean he was overstepping? Or would he be aiding Laura in finding the life she truly deserved? "Let's take it one step at a time," he told her. "I'll be right here, whatever you need." But he also recognized that this was a two-edged sword. The more he entwined their lives, the more they both would be exposed to risks that lay just beyond the horizon. As the afternoon sun began to sink, a new kind of determination rose within Julian. He made a decision. He would confront the specter of his own past as he assisted Laura in facing hers. They needed to strategize and become proactive. If they were going to break free from their shared burdens, they would have to face the entities that threatened their peace. But as they prepared to delve deeper, Julian felt an unexpected wave of resolve wash over him. While the path ahead was devoid of clarity, it was illuminated by the strength they were cultivating together. Yet just as the light seemed to break through the clouds, Laura's phone buzzed again, a message illuminating the screen. The sender's name made Julian's stomach twist with ice-cold trepidation. This ongoing hostility would need to be addressed head-on. They were caught in a web of anxiety. Yet one undeniable truth glimmered. Having each other ignited a burning flame that dared to refuse the shadows. "Who is it now?" Julian whispered, panic racing through him. The stakes were higher than ever. Just when they thought they had turned a corner, deeper challenges awaited. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictability that lay ahead, and Julian braced himself for the storm they would surely face together. Julian inhaled deeply as Laura hesitated to open the message. Every fiber of his being urged him to take command of the situation, to dismantle whatever threat lingered on the other side of that screen. Yet, a nagging doubt tugged at him. Was he capable of navigating the relentless storm they now faced? Could his past decisions prepare him for this battle? "Laura," he prompted, his voice steady. "Let's open it together. Whatever it is, we'll tackle it head-on." She blinked once, then again, as though hoping to erase the tension that clung to her. Finally, she nodded and tapped on the screen. The message revealed itself, a cryptic note expressing contempt and a veiled threat, this time directed at Julian as well. "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." The words suffocated him. Yet, instead of trembling fear, a flame ignited within. This wasn't just about Laura anymore. It felt personal, almost like a call to arms. "Look at that." He tried to inject bravado into his tone. "He's scared. We're a threat to his control. Together, we're stronger than he thinks." Laura's eyes darted to his, and for the first time, a spark of defiance danced within them. "You mean we could actually do something about this? Not just take it? Fight back?" "Yes," Julian affirmed, conviction surging in his veins. They needed to reclaim their agency. "We're done being victims. I'll start reaching out to the right people, lawyers who are skilled at handling this kind of harassment. We'll carve out a solid plan." While his thoughts galloped into strategies, Julian also confronted the reflection of his uncertainty. Could they really navigate this labyrinth of fear and manipulation without losing themselves? Fears that had long shackled his own aspirations revisited him, reminding him of battles fought in silence, of respect mistaken for weakness. "You can't carry this alone, you know," he said, his eyes locking with Laura's in a moment of vulnerability. "I have my own scars. I'm not invincible." Tears welled up again in her gaze, but this time they mirrored determination, not despair. "I don't expect you to be perfect. I just need you to be here. Together, maybe we can build a wall strong enough so he can't breach it." Julian nodded, feeling an influx of purpose. It was true. Together they could amplify their resistance. They would shield each other while dismantling the other's fears, slowly replacing vulnerabilities with armor forged from mutual respect and understanding. They moved to Julian's laptop, skimming through potential lawyers and support resources, each click chipping away at the weight pressing down on them. As they gathered names, experiences, and strategies, the air lightened, charged with an electric kind of determination. The symbols of their past would not dictate their future. A powerful realization stoked the embers of Julian's resolve. However, the more they strategized, the more he recognized a wider path of transformation lay ahead of him, stretching beyond this externally imposed conflict. He wasn't merely fighting for Laura against her haunting past. He was staking a claim on his own future. As they finalized a list of contacts, the world outside dimmed under twilight. But within their small bubble, light pooled. Each detail, each decision, felt like a brushstroke on the canvas of their shared lives. Yet an echo of Laura's ex-husband's chilling threats lingered, hovering like a specter they could not ignore. "Tomorrow, we take a deliberate step forward. We won't hide from whatever comes," Julian declared with newfound tenacity. "But what happens if we reach out, and he retaliates?" Laura's voice quivered like a taut string. "I guess that's where we'll find out what we're really made of," he replied, heart pounding, knowing that they were about to unleash consequences neither could fully foresee. Just as Julian's confidence swelled, Laura's phone buzzed once more, the screen illuminating with the incoming communication that could very well change everything. A voicemail, perhaps detailing the next move of the relentless enemy they had awakened. In that moment, everything felt perilously balanced on the edge of discovery, both promising and menacing. "Are you ready for what's next?" Julian asked, his resolve wavering only in statement, but firm in intention. With the buzzing of Laura's phone echoing in his mind, Julian felt time momentarily freeze. The air was thick with unspoken urgency. It was as if the voicemail held not only a message, but also the potential to unravel everything they had just begun to piece together. "Go ahead, listen to it," he urged, though his heart thrummed against his ribs with a chaotic blend of anticipation and dread. Laura hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen, trembling ever so slightly. "Are we really ready?" she asked, her voice betraying a mix of hope and fear. The storm outside seemed to mimic their internal struggle, the rain pelting against the windows as if nature itself celebrated their resolve, while simultaneously challenging their intentions. "Ready or not, we need to know what we're up against," Julian replied, his tone firm. He watched as she pressed play, each second dragging out, stretching the tension until it felt almost unbearably taut. The voicemail began. A raspy voice dripping with malice flooded in. "You think fighting back gives you power? You have no idea what you're playing with," it hissed, each word underscoring the gravity of their situation. "You can't escape what's been set in motion. There will always be consequences." The message thrummed with nails on chalkboard frustration. Julian's stomach churned, and he could see Laura's expression morph from determination to a flicker of fear, expressed delicately as her breaths turned shallow. This isn't just a power trip. This is serious," she whispered, grappling with the reality that had just sharpened like a knife at their throat. "Or it's an attempt to intimidate us into silence," Julian countered, masking his own trepidation beneath layers of tactical thoughts. "We can't let fear dictate our actions." "But what if he really means it?" Laura responded, a tear escaping down her cheek. The vulnerability in her voice pierced through him. It was a reminder of everything they stood to lose. Yet somewhere within, trapped beneath his initial doubts, anger began to simmer. "Then we make him realize we're not vulnerable anymore," he asserted, channeling the resolve that had only grown since they had decided to fight back together. "We don't live in shadows. We won't play by his rules." It was a moment of revelation. Julian was shaken but not broken. He remembered the resilience he'd often hidden, the fire he'd stifled beneath layers of insecurity. This was no longer just a fight for Laura's rights. This was about reclaiming the full spectrum of who he was beneath all the masks. As Laura wiped her tears, a shift swept through the space between them. It was manageable. They needed to craft their narrative and stand firm against the waves crashing upon them. "Let's go through their responses," Julian encouraged, returning to the laptop with a newfound sense of purpose. "We'll draft a communication strategy, document everything he sends. We'll not only build our defenses, we'll document the siege." Exchanging glances laced with newly forged determination, they set about brainstorming potential responses. Each keystroke began to resemble not just a plan, but a blueprint for a larger metamorphosis. Julian felt the stirrings of his own voice rising within, a potential he had never fully tapped into, a leader rising from the ashes of self-doubt. Through the chaos, he glimpsed another truth emerging. Each action now had implications, not only for Laura, but for himself, too. It was a revelation that empowered him. He would not just support Laura. He would contour his own identity through this journey. They began to outline messages to change the game, not merely defensive, but boldly asserting their stance. Fear had constrained how Julian approached challenges. Now, he learned to confront them with a tactical heart, propelled by the partnership they had forged. Just as they were about to finalize their first communication draft, a message pinged on Julian's phone, a notification that threatened to unravel the careful framework they had begun to build. It was from an unknown number, the subject line chillingly vague, but clearly marked. "You chose the wrong side." Julian felt the weight of the moment, the world outside fading as they faced a new layer of risk and revelation. This wasn't merely about survival anymore. It was the beginning of a crucible designed to test their very resolve. "Laura," he said with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, "I think we've just ignited a fire we can't control." And with that, the tension coiling tighter, they both understood. The real confrontation was just on the horizon. Julian stared at the message, the text pulsating like a heartbeat, a constant reminder of the impending confrontation. "We chose the wrong side." The phrase repeated in his mind, a heavy burden threatening to crush the momentum they had just gained. Laura shifted uncomfortably beside him, her gaze flickering between Julian's taut expression and the screen. They had opened a door, but now it loomed ominously, echoing with every choice they had made to stand their ground. Do you think it's a threat?" she asked, struggling to articulate the unease curling in her stomach. Julian inhaled deeply, channeling his rising anger. "It's designed to intimidate, but intimidation only works if you let it." Despite his outward calm, a storm brewed within him. He had long concealed his assertiveness, allowed self-doubt to dictate his actions, but no longer. This message was a test of who he could become, as much as it was of what they faced. "Let's not react too quickly," he suggested, turning back to the laptop, fingers poised over the keyboard. "We need to think strategically. The goal is to counter this without showing our fear." Responses flooded his mind, but under the current tension, he wrestled with the emotions that surged with each idea. Would it be courageous to respond directly, or dangerously reckless? Every keystroke now carried the weight of not only their plans, but his evolving self, one he had previously ignored. He wasn't just fighting for Laura anymore. His voice rang in the silence, and for the first time, he recognized the power nascent within him. His thoughts shifted back to their earlier plans. What if we frame our response as a public statement? Something bold and clear. Show we won't be silenced. There was an edge to his voice that wasn't there before, a newfound determination that surprised him. Laura nodded, still processing yet emboldened by his confidence. "We can issue a statement that reflects our commitment to transparency. Let everyone know we won't back down." With that, they scribbled notes, laying the foundation for a message that showcased their resolve. The act of creation propelled Julian further, unlocking memories of presenting in classrooms, spearheading group projects, each recollection feeding the courage he had long buried. He yearned to reclaim his narrative. Then he thought about the stark contrast of this moment. The sound of rain slashing against the window acted like a backdrop to their aspirations, an exclamation point to their defiance. Outside, nature's turmoil mirrored the cacophony within. They both understood nothing would be easy. As they hammered out sentences, he noticed Laura's focus sharpen. Her hands danced on the keyboard, suggestions flowing like unfiltered creativity. It wasn't merely her fighting spirit that he admired. It was the conviction behind her actions. She was no longer just the person in distress. She was transformation personified. "Remember," Julian said, his voice steady, "we document each exchange. If he thinks he can win through intimidation, he's underestimated us both." The words sounded foreign yet exhilarating. He was learning to assert himself in ways he had stifled. But fate, usually silent, conspired to test him again. As they breathed life into their draft, another notification chimed. A new message, this time from an unfamiliar email address. A chill ran down Julian's spine. He hesitated before clicking it open. "Didn't you hear?" There may be worse consequences than you realize. Your defiance might just put Laura directly in harm's way. It read, chilling with a promise of darkness. The implications crashed down around him. Not only were they confronting an antagonist, they now had to consider that their very actions could endanger Laura, the very person he was fighting to protect. It was as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Julian. Laura's voice trembled with concern, pulling him back from the brink of despair. They were on the cusp of something monumental, both exhilarating and dangerous. Julian clenched his jaw, grappling with the choice laid before him, to turn back into the shadows of his old self, or to step boldly into the light, knowing the risks involved. "We can't give in," he finally said, anchored by a fierce sense of purpose. But as their resolve hardened, they both felt the undeniable weight of the storm, a new threat rising, not just from the outside. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed through the room, resonating like a thunderclap, sending dread skittering through his spine. "Is this what we've awakened?" Julian murmured under his breath, glancing at Laura, whose worry mirrored his own. The real confrontation loomed ever closer, waiting just beyond their door. Julian's heart raced, each pulse echoing the severity of the situation. The knock reverberated through the room like an ominous reminder of their burgeoning conflict, the stakes escalating with every passing moment. He felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him. No longer could he afford the luxury of hesitance or self-doubt. "Stay back," he whispered to Laura, instinctively moving in front of her. The protective instinct surged within him. He would confront whatever lay behind that door, but not without ensuring she was safe first. With cautious determination, Julian approached. The wood was cold under his fingertips, each grain a reminder of the fragile barrier between them and the world outside, a world that had grown hostile and uncertain. "Who is it?" he called, trying to maintain an assertive tone that he hoped would mask the turmoil brewing within him. "Open up, Julian. We need to talk," a voice demanded from the other side, crisp and clear, sending a chill down his spine. He recognized it as Danny, the very antagonist they had begun to confront. 1,000 thoughts surged simultaneously. What would facing Danny mean? How would he handle this confrontation where his words could have immediate consequences? Julian's recent journey of self-discovery flashed through his mind, a testament to his growing will. Would it be enough? He turned to Laura, who stood behind him with a look of apprehension mixed with a flicker of defiance. "What do we do?" she mouthed, her eyes wide, searching his for guidance. Her confidence bolstered him. They had crafted a plan to stand firm, to show that intimidation would not prevail. He made his choice then, feeling the surge of leadership rise within him. Opening that door would mean stepping into his new role, no longer the shadowed participant in a game he barely understood. "Let's confront him together," Julian said, the words spilling out with newfound confidence. As he opened the door, the stark contrast of the outside world hit him. A cold gust of air that seeped through the threshold, filled with impending conflict. Danny stood there, the very image of arrogance, cloaked in a tailored suit that spoke of wealth and power. But there was something frayed in his demeanor, as if Julian's resolve had unsettled him. "You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest," he began, sarcasm dripping from his words, but Julian cut him off. "We won't be intimidated. Your threats only serve to strengthen our resolve," he declared, surprising even himself with the authority in his voice. It wasn't just bravado. Within, he felt a firm crystallization of purpose. Danny's brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across his face. "You think this is a game? You're putting your friend at risk," he warned. But the edge in his tone lacked the confidence that Julian had sensed before. "Risk comes with every choice we make. But this isn't just about us anymore, Danny." Julian stepped closer, the gap narrowing with each word. "This is about integrity, and we're not backing down." Danny's gaze shifted from Julian to Laura, and for a brief moment, Julian saw the invisible tension shift. Was Danny underestimating them both? With every instinct screaming at him to recoil or retreat, Julian pushed forward, fueled by a need to protect and assert. "What do you want?" Danny asked, his voice less composed, an echo of doubt lacing his confidence. "We want to expose the truth," Julian replied, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, but also a thrill in claiming this narrative. "You can try to intimidate us, but we will speak out." The words had a power he hadn't anticipated, igniting a fire of determination that burned brightly within him. He was constructing not just a response, but a newfound identity rooted in strength and resolve. As Julian spoke, a sense of clarity washed over him. This confrontation might very well be the turning point not just for their mission, but for his evolution as a person. Just then, a flash of thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the air around them. Danny's expression turned from irritation to something darker, a warning crawling across his features. "You think this will end well for you?" Julian's heart raced, knowing now that the door could not be closed. "The time has come to face the truth, Danny. You underestimate what we're willing to lose." As he stood firm, a gust of wind whipped through the hallway, chilling but invigorating, reflecting his growing determination. In that moment, Julian understood. Confronting his fears head-on was not just the key to this unfolding battle, but also a fundamental step to his own transformation. But just when the atmosphere thickened with tension, another sound interrupted the charged air, a stunning revelation echoing from behind. Laura gasped, eyes widening. "Julian, look!" He turned only to see another figure approaching from the shadows, a third player in a game far more dangerous than he had anticipated. The stakes surged higher, and uncertainty clawed at him. What new challenge lay ahead? Julian felt the surge of adrenaline as the shadowy figure stepped into the dim light of the hallway. Time slowed as he tried to process who had just entered the escalating standoff. Laura stood rooted beside him, her expression oscillating between fear and expectation. Julian's heart raced as he braced himself to confront whatever new element this scene would unleash. "Who are you?" Danny demanded, confusion edged with authority. The newcomer glanced around, taking in the tension in the room, and Julian could see the way the fool's courage deflated from Danny's posture. Recognition dawned on him. This wasn't just anyone. It was Marcus, a prominent lawyer drawn into the web of manipulation surrounding Laura and Danny. This revelation was a lifeline thrown at the darkest moment. "Marcus!" Julian exclaimed, feeling the stirrings of hope glimmer beneath the heavy clouds threatening their peace. "You came." "Of course I did," Marcus replied, his voice calm and unwavering against the palpable tension. He took a step forward, surveying both Danny and the two of them. "I've been watching the developments. You've managed to bring this to a head faster than expected." "What, so you can play referee?" Danny scoffed, struggling to maintain an air of superiority. "I'm here to make sure the law is observed," Marcus retorted, an authority in his voice that made the gravity of their encounter shift. "And it seems the law would not look kindly on intimidation or threats." With that, Julian felt a kinetic charge pass through him. This was the turning point, the moment they could reclaim their narrative, asserting not just their intent, but their rights. Turning to Laura, Julian felt a spark igniting further inside his chest. "This is what we were fighting for. We don't have to hide anymore." Laura's eyes shone with a mixture of gratitude and newfound courage. "You're right," she said, her voice steadying. "This isn't just about the past. It's about claiming what's ours." Danny's face darkened, retreating somewhat under the mounting pressure of their united front. "You think you can just sit back and let your fancy lawyer do the work? You're playing with forces you don't fully understand," he hissed. Julian stepped forward, emboldened. "We understand enough to know that moving forward is all that matters now. You've held power through fear for too long." The defiance surging through him felt incredibly liberating. It was no longer just about protecting Laura. It was a reclamation of his identity as well. With Marcus standing with them, Julian felt the weight of years of conformity and insecurity slip from his shoulders. The whole ordeal had stunted his growth, chained him to a persona he was now uncompromisingly shedding.
"Now that I'm here, it's you who should be wary, Danny," Marcus warned, crafting an invisible barrier between them and the threat that loomed. "Every intimidation tactic you've used has been recorded, and I can make sure that the legal repercussions for your actions are absolutely grave."
Julian recalled the many times he had hidden behind his wealth and success, avoiding confrontation. Now, standing arm in arm with Laura, surrounded by the tools of justice, he finally felt the essence of his true power surface. "Do your worst, Danny," Julian added confidently, the heat of assertion in his voice. "But we won't yield anymore. We're choosing our lives back." Danny tightened his jaw, his bravado beginning to crumble under the delicious anticipation of consequence. There was something potent about the unity they had forged amidst the chaos. Each declaration made was a testament to genuine growth, not only for Laura, but also for him. "You should have thought twice before involving yourself with the likes of me," Danny growled, but Julian could see the fear now etched in his features. There was an undeniable shift. They had now tipped the scales. With renewed determination, Marcus stepped closer. "I advise you leave this matter be, for both your sake and your reputation." His tone was firm, backed by an impressive veneer of authority. As the three of them bore down on Danny, Julian felt something lift, the burdens of the past and future colliding and sparking a moment of clarity. He was no longer trapped in the shadows of self-doubt. Here, confronting a foe who once instilled fear in him, Julian realized he had transformed from a man seeking approval to a force asserting his own narrative. "Together, we're unstoppable," Laura whispered, squeezing Julian's hand with fierce determination. They stood united, a testament to resilience and the unwavering pursuit of justice. As the tension peaked, Danny stumbled back, visibly shaken. "You'll regret this," he spat, retreating into the abyss of despair as the shadows reclaimed their sinister hold. But as he left, Julian felt the final tether of self-doubt snap. In that moment, not only had Laura reclaimed her power, but he had too. They were not merely survivors of their circumstances. They had become architects of their own destinies. With the warm glow of camaraderie surrounding them, Julian turned to Laura and Marcus, a newfound recognition in his eyes. "We did it. We faced the storm, and it only made us stronger." As they shared a fleeting smile, as if their awakening united them in a silent promise, Julian realized they had not only won a battle, they had stepped into something profound, an absolute transformation. The fear that threatened to plague them before had amalgamated into a fearless future, each moment beckoning with limitless potential. However, he knew their journey was far from ended. The fight for their authentic lives and aspirations was only just beginning, and in that sacred space, standing resolved against the gathering storm, Julian understood the true power rested in their unwavering connection, a shared bravery and newfound identity rooted in hope, passion, and the undeniable possibility of positive change. Together, they had achieved far more than confronting an enemy. They had conquered their own limitations and dished out a taste of empowerment, leaving no doubt that they would continue to dismantle the barriers that sought to dictate their lives. As the sun began to pierce through the darkened clouds, a radiant light illuminated their path ahead, flooding them with boundless energy, a reminder that they would walk this transforming journey together. And just like that, Julian stepped out into the world, ready to seize every moment, fueled by the radiant belief that nothing could hold him back any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.